All right, everybody, welcome. So, what is the date today? I always have to scramble. It's November 2nd, right? This should be a day I shouldn't have a trouble remembering, but still, it's me. So, anyway, it's November 2nd, 2020, and this is class 7 of the Buddhist Neigong studies with Rinsen. And before we move on to new content, last time we talked a lot about the process of rooting, right, and grounding. And for those who weren't around for that or haven't seen it, I would refer you to the earlier video in this series, and you can check that out and kind of work through it. But for those who've worked with the material, if you've got any observations about that practice of rooting and stabilizing, I'd love to hear it. And if not, we'll just then move on to a new subject that everybody can kind of click in with. But I'm curious what your experience, if any, has been like with this material. Does anybody have something they'd like to kind of throw in the hopper? Ankin, please.
Um, yeah, you mentioned as like a tip in the last class that you can imagine a red dot where you're trying to get your attention. That was really helpful for me. It made it much easier.
Nice. That's great. Yeah, I totally got that from Dan Harden, who's a teacher of internal power and Aiki, and it's a very useful visualization. So yeah, it's not the only one for sure, but it's a very useful one. And there's ways of taking that visualization and activating it in different ways to generate different effects. And so it's a good skill to be acquainted with. Anybody else? Please, Mark. Yeah.
I've been doing the exercises mostly every day, and I did one last night, and as I was bringing the energy down, I felt several blockage areas, several,
Mm-hmm.
and it concerned me, not overly, but I thought, oh, this is something to be aware of, and work through that. Um, it's funny how this works. Then last night I had a dream about a river that was kept getting stopped up as it was flowing. It was
Yeah.
very visual kind of thing. Uh, and I reflected a lot today about what's been going on in my life, and I do feel there are challenges and blocked areas. So I just felt the need to put that out there, say that out
Yeah.
loud.
Yeah, thank you. No, it's useful, and it's a really good sign, actually, in my opinion, that some dream activity is sort of resonant with your physical work, because it really is a whole body, whole mind thing. The body and the mind, actually aren't separate things. And when you start working with the structure in these very intentional ways, you are definitely intervening in your unconscious mind in very deliberate ways, whether you know it or not, right? So all of this stuff is of a single taste, actually. And so it's not that uncommon, actually, that, as you start to like learn how to wield your mind and go through your body and do these kind of centering and grounding and rooting practices, that as you start to become aware of blockages, it's a little uncomfortable and it's a little disconcerting. Okay. Now, the blockages were there before you became aware of them. This is the critical point. Okay. It's not like you're creating the blockages when you sit down and pay attention. You're actually noticing what's there. Okay. So, most of the time, we habituate to our bodies in ways that help mask dis-ease and discomfort. And when we start to learn how to wield the body well, then those difficulties in the body become apparent. They become accessible. We can contact them. And that feels disconcerting, but it's actually progress because once we can be in contact with it, then we can start to work with it. Okay. If we can't see it, we can't work with it. If we don't know it's there, we can't work with it. Right. So, so that's one thing. And the other thing is that our systems are complicated, especially, we've been around the sun a few times, right? So it's like there's often many overlapping and related blockages that are all kind of at the same time functional or dysfunctional, I guess I should say. And that's super common, right? So what at first might feel like a big dull sense of unease, with practice becomes like two different kind of gravitational centers of dis-ease or uncomfort in the body, discomfort in the body. And then when you peer at it with more intensity, you can actually feel that there's space in between, and that's actually one big thing and two or three small things over here. And it's very much like getting a telescope and looking up at a star and finding it's a galaxy. And there's a lot more there than we initially anticipated, right? And so this is all progress. This is actually all good. The more sensitive we become, the more tuned in we become, the more we're able to see and acknowledge what's actually there. And then we've earned the right and the ability to let it go. Okay. So you can trust the process. You know, if you're standing in a way that's physically aligned and you're going through the procedure correctly and you notice the blockages, that's success. That's what a win looks like, you know, because it's there whether you notice it or not. Once you notice it, you can put attention there and you can release it and you can improve it. Okay. And I would say that it's an important thing to have the mindset of gradual experience. Okay, I want to, every time I practice Neigong, every time I practice Qigong, I'm looking to get more experience with it, with myself. I'm not trying to master this or solve everything or become the ultimate power in the universe or anything like this. What I'm trying to do is simply gain experience. Okay. And then if you think about, you know, if there's a blockage or a difficulty, if I can maybe lessen the blockage by about 0.5%, that's a massive win. Okay, if I can lessen the blockage by 1% or 2, that's just incalculably awesome, right? Because you relentlessly keep gently wearing away at the dysfunction, the way water gradually wears through rock, okay? And this kind of progress with blockages doesn't do any harm to your structure. If you have a big rock in the middle of the river and you get frustrated with it and you like stick some dynamite in there and blow it up, it'll feel like progress, but the problem is now you have a bunch of sharp shards all over the riverbed. And that's a different kind of problem. It's even worse in a way, right? So what you want to do is you want to gradually erode the rock down, and the water very gradually and very comfortably makes things more and more and more workable, right? So with this kind of gentle but precise attitude, longevity is constantly increased and health is constantly enhanced. Okay, so it's not an Arnold Schwarzenegger kind of like one more rep kind of mindset. All right, thank you. That was a useful comment. I think I saw another gasho or so on. Yeah, please.
How do blockages actually show up? Is it always like pain, or is it something else? Can it be different things? Like I
Yeah.
have, like I'm experiencing pain like on one side of my neck,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes my knees, like I'll be in the middle of the going down, and my knees lock up.
Oh, good for you. Nice.
And so, like, I got those two things going on.
Yeah, it can show up a lot of different ways. Okay, one of the ways that it shows up is just gross pain, like, you know, like a headache. Pain can be dull and it can be acute, and there's a bandwidth there. Okay, it goes from really, really sharp, metallic, pointy to jagged, and then it gets fuzzy and fuzzy and fuzzy until it's just like a dull ache. Okay, and all of those range, the bouquet of sensations there, we'll call that pain. All right, from sort of like dull to sharp. But there's also a sense of just strength. Ironically, if you're scanning through the body and you encounter someplace that feels really strong, that's actually a kind of dysfunction also. That's another kind of a too much heat, too much energy compiled there, it's not painful. It just feels strong, right? Like abnormally strong, right? Or you can have a sense of tension that doesn't have the sensation of pain. There's no sharp or dull pain, but there's a tension there. Okay, like if you grab your fist and just keep closing it, it doesn't hurt per se, but there's a tension in there. It can feel strong. Like try it with your hand, and you can see what I'm doing here. Like take your fist, everybody, take your fist if you would, and just close it, and just keep closing it uncomfortably. All right. Now you wouldn't usually call that pain, but it's locked up, and it can feel. You can interpret that feeling as strength. You can interpret that as a clench. You can interpret that like it's a locked feeling, like maybe you can't let your hand go anymore. It's stuck there. Okay. And eventually, if you had it this way long enough, it would go numb. So it can actually feel like a big blank spot when you're scanning through. You just feel nothing. It's like a big blank spot. So what you want to do is hover over the blank spot, get circulation going in there. You start to open it up a little bit, and then if you're lucky, it'll hurt, because pain is progress. Actually, when you can get sensation in there, it's like, oh, like imagine if that's been locked up for a year and you finally get some movement. It's gonna smart, but it's good because you're actually getting movement through the joints. Does that make sense? Eventually movement is fluid and flexible and fun, right? But when it's not like that, it's various levels of stuck, say. So you have everything from kind of like a blind spot to a clenching, powerful kind of thing, to a dull ache, all the way to a sharp pain, something like this. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. So it can show up. It can show up lots of different ways, and there's a funny little borderline between pleasure and pain, like a tickle and a hurt. Sometimes, you can get very pleasurable sensations when you're moving through the body, and you don't really want to lean into those and try to amplify them. It's the same thing. You treat that as if it's another energetic center that needs to be released. So we're constantly just releasing and grounding everything. Does that help?
Yes. Thanks.
Beautiful. Who else had something here? Kaishin, please.
More of a comment than a question as far as how it's been useful. Um, as I've been getting familiar with it, and as you've been saying too, like particularly the rooting and the wash through, um, rather than all like I do a block in the morning or in the evening, but I'm finding that it's something that I can touch into in like a small period of time as well. So like I'll be in my office just a few minutes before I go into class, and then again at lunch. And the same way, I can do centering work with my breath, that I've been using this to sort of touch in that same way, but much more in terms of the body, like the opening of everything.
That's fantastic. Yeah. As we get more familiar, with your practice of Zazen, that feeling of being centered and connected into the one point, you can access that instantly. In fact, it can be always kind of a little bit operable, right? In the same way, this grounding and rootedness becomes just kind of a feature of the way your key body is organized, the way your structure is organized. So automatically, your structure is already grounding and rooting everything, right? And in between those, you can touch into it consciously throughout the day and sort of reignite and reconnect. But ultimately, we want to be both centered to the one point and have a structure that's grounding and rooting basically at all times. There's other aspects too. There's being upright, there's being expanded, there's drawing in all of these different qualities. We'll talk about them in turn. But this grounded quality, once you've kind of taken a bath in it, I guess, and you can really immerse in the feeling of it, then you can access it more and more throughout the day. That's fantastic that you're doing that. And then eventually it just becomes kind of a permanent part of your structure. Okay. So for those who train in martial art and Aiki, there's no way that you'll ever be able to train so that you can just react fast enough. it's not possible, and it's not the goal. What you want to do is you want to have your structure aligned inherently so that when anything connects with it, it's already connecting with something that's structured appropriately. You don't have to react because your structure is already correctly organized. Does that make sense? So this is exactly true martially, and it's exactly true spiritually. Okay, when you've got your spirit, to so to speak, centered and grounded, then whatever comes at you, like an election, you can find a way to be grounded and rooted as you work through, what it is that needs to be worked through here. Okay, and so in between that, a little bit of checking in with it throughout the day is super, super useful. Great. Shokai, did you have something?
I had something in my mind. I wasn't actually going to say it, but you must have. You always seem to know what I'm thinking. So I reflect what everyone was saying about, the standing posture that we did up till the last class. And it was, I love it and it's wonderful. But then last class, the thing we did, moving, that was incredibly powerful when we did it together. And I mean, I was really taken aback by that. And then the following morning, I think I texted you actually, because I still had I could still residually feel it in my body. And that kind of freaked me out. So I didn't do that all week because I thought, I'm not sure I can trust myself with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you show me the movement that we did?
Well, it wasn't really a movement. We were doing like the flow through the body.
Gotcha. You're talking about the grounding.
Well, we had completed the standing posture and then we were moving through the body and like into the third eye and into
Gotcha.
the various, that one.
Okay. Yeah. When you say moving, I thought maybe I gave some kind of a moving, flowing practice, which we will do in time, but I would be surprised if I did thus far. So, but yeah, it's true. I mean, one thing to be aware of is that you always want to make sure that the energy is cycling. So, well, let me not say that because cycling is a subject that we'll get to, but you want to be able to concentrate your mind in these various points and then move it to other points. And you want to be able to move that, let's say, that red dot throughout your structure and bring the energy along with you when you do that. Okay. And so if some gets stuck somewhere, you just kind of flush down, right? You just kind of flush down. The ultimate answer to this is called the microcosmic orbit, and that's something that I'll introduce later. I don't feel that we're ready to do that as a class right now, but yeah, it is something to be aware of. The quick answer and the deep answer right now is just contact it and lead it down to the next point, and then lead it down to the next point and lead it down to the next point, and just keep doing that, and it will move. Okay. All right. Okay, everybody. So let me introduce the next chunk, and this even if you haven't done the other stuff, this will be something you can have some access to. There's a process that we've talked about, which is just centering, and that's putting your mind in one point and being centered. Fine. Then we spend a great deal of time talking about grounding and rooting, right? And so we use a standing posture for that, and we have very specific ways of sending the energy from the crown all the way down through and into the ground, and actually from above the crown. And just the idea here is to get sensitive to dysfunction in the system, places where gravity is not, flowing smoothly, and get it to flow smoothly down. And then this way, obstructions and difficulties in the body are grounded. It's like a lightning rod, something like this, okay? Now, there's a separate practice called dispersing, okay? Dispersing. You could call it scattering, but I like dispersing, so that's what I'll call it. But the image is a little bit different, okay? Now, this you use for pain, and you use this for anything that's clenched and is painful, okay? And what you do is this. When you're scanning through the body, okay, and you're moving down through a part, if you find some place in the body that's painful, like Kaishan mentioned, you know, the neck, or I think it was so on somebody, you know, a little pain in my neck here, a little pain in my back there. And if you've tried to ground it and you find that that pain in the body keeps asserting itself, okay, then you can try this practice, which is dispersing. Now, in dispersing, what you do is you land your mind on that dysfunction in the body, the pain in the body. And this is in the standing posture, by the way. Okay. So you're standing up in the standing posture that I've shown you. And in that standing posture, as you're scanning through, you run into that old ache again, or whatever it is. Okay. And you're trying to ground it and you find it unsatisfactory. It's not really doing as much as you would like to relieve, get some relief. Now, I've talked a little bit about your energy body, your ki body, your etheric body. These are all kind of synonymous terms, really, but it's the energy that your body generates, right? And I've said that it goes up, you know, about, you know, to where your middle fingers meet up here, and it goes something like your arm's length around you and something like an egg, okay? And this is energy that your body is actually radiating out. As I mentioned last time, for some people, there are holes and gaps in that. For some people, it's radiant and vibrant all the way around. Some people have very strong fronts. A lot of people are very strong up here, but then almost nothing behind them. It just kind of depends, okay? But for the purposes of the conversation, you think about, you basically have at least from your middle finger to your wrist that far away in your body, all the way around you, okay? And ideally, it's further out, like about where your hands can go, something like that far. So when you visualize that, that's a good kind of rule of thumb. And what you do is this: you're scanning through, you find a pain or a dysfunction, you've tried to ground it, and you've gotten as much out of that as you can. Then what you can do is you can contact the pain, okay? And with your mind, you let your mind land directly on the pain, okay? And then you very gradually start to move it outside of your body. So it's as if you hit it with Velcro, okay? It sinks in there, and you start to just gently move it away from your body. And you have to be very patient with this. If you rush this, it just doesn't work. The Velcro comes right off. You have to stick and very, very gradually just draw it outside of your physical body. And you want to bring it to about the edges of where your arms would go, okay? And this is, of course, imaginative play, but what's happening is you're using your mind in a way that makes the chi move in certain specific ways. So it's a meaningful imaginative play. It's an imaginative play that actually affects things in what we would call the objective real world, right? Like someone imagined that coffee would be a thing, and now I can have some if I want. So that was imaginative play at one time, right? Now it's very real in my world. Nice. Okay, so what you can do is you can imagine that pain, Velcro it, and just move it outside the body. Now there's a very important point to this, that this energetic field is constantly cycling, okay? It's not a static thing. It's not like Star Trek where the shields are up and it just sits there. It's a cycling, it's a field, like a magnetic field, all right? So like when the solar flare hits the earth, we make the aurora borealis and you can see this thing. It's moving and it's alive, and your field is like that. And so what you don't want to do, and this is very important, you don't want to take pain or gook or difficulty, whether it's physical or psychological or emotional or spiritual or any other kind. Just, it can be a feeling tone of sadness in my heart. Fine, okay? What you try to do is ground it, root it, and then if it's still there and you want to, you can take it and connect with it and move it out, and move it out, and move it out. And what you don't do is then fling it at other people. You don't take that sad, bad feeling and just like throw it onto the next guy's yard. Okay, that's not cool. You don't do that. All right, what you're going to do instead is you take it out, and what you visualize, okay, is that when it gets to the edge of your key body, it starts to cycle. Kodo, if you would mute yourself, it might be useful.
Sorry.
Maybe I can do that. There we are. So what you do is you take it out and you move it out here, and then you imagine it cycling through, and it gets recycled. Okay, so the gook of it, when it hits the edge of your field, it turns pure, and then it just cycles through. Does that make sense to everybody? So that's a very different thing than just take the black stuff out and throw it away. Take the icky stuff out and throw it away. No, you pull it out and then you cycle it through again, and you do this in your imaginative, the way you visualize it. See, yeah. So this can be a physical pain, it can be an emotional pain, it can be any kind of a blockage that you feel. Yeah, I think that's as much as I have to say at this time. So let's try it. If you can do it sitting, or you can stand up. Okay, I'm going to stay seated so you can kind of still see me in this posture, but you can stand up if you like, or you can do this seated. And what you'll do is either choose your seated posture or a standing posture, and just close your eyes, okay? And then just gently start to scan down through your body. Again, the specific points we talked about in last class, you can review that, but just a general scan from the top of the head down. And you're going slowly. And, you know, if you're like most people with a body, somewhere along there, you'll find some discomfort. Good for you. There it is. Okay, so there's some discomfort. Feel where it is. And then what I'm going to invite you to do is contact that point and just gently start pulling it away. Not aggressively. You're not making an enemy out of it. You're just gently inviting it to release and move out. When it gets to be something like an elbow or an arm's length away from you, just let it dissolve and start to cycle in. And once you've done that, you can go back to the original point and notice that it's a couple of % relaxed from where it was. So let's take for an example, we'll do this together. Most people have some tension in the shoulders, like up there by the neck. And so just bring some attention to that upper shoulder area. Feel some tension there. And first, invite that to just drop down through the structure and be grounded. And send it right through the floor. So you can feel the energy from the tense shoulders flowing down right through your structure, down into the ground and underneath it. And then at the same time, you can go up to the shoulder and bring the tension out of your body. So it's going away from you laterally. And different layers of the tension are affected that way. Some of it disperses down quite readily. Some of it disperses out quite readily. So at once, you've got some material sinking through the body and grounding, and some tension going out into the etheric field and circulating. Okay. So slowly bring your eyes open and just watch me for a second. So if I've got tension here, let's just say, as an example, the one thing I'm doing is grounding and I'm sending it down the structure, right? And it goes right down into the floor. And so that's like a waterfall. It's not a singular event. It's like a trail of energy that keeps kind of going. So that's going right through the structure and down, 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 right? And then once that's in place, that grounding is in place, then I can start the dispersing and take some here and pull it out this way and actually have it disperse. So it's kind of doing this, right? So if I'm here, this is grounding the tension and this is pulling it and dispersing it. And it's kind of happening simultaneously. See, this one comes out and goes here. This one comes down. Now, some techniques of Neigong and Qigong actually physicalize this with your hands. And so I'll invite you to try and experiment with that now. Let's just take the tension in the shoulders, okay, and just go like this. Put your hands right where they are and just gently make the chi in the center of your body just ground and go down. Boom. And again, what you're doing is you're setting a pattern, right? You're letting your mind trace through the innards of your body along those structural support lines, and you're getting the energy to flow there. So it's not really out here in my hands. If I could, I'd put my hands in my structure and go down, but I can't do it. So I'm right here, and it's just going down. And you feel each time you do this that the tension in your shoulders is relieved by some percent, some amount. It grounds and flushes down, right? Now you could do this, I don't know, 10 times, 20 times, 108 times, 40 times, 72 times, pick a sacred number, doesn't matter. You do it until you feel like you're cooked, all right? Or you've got it kind of in place. All right, we'll do a couple more. Yeah. Okay, so now we're going to do the dispersing. So the hands look different. So the hands will look like this, watch. All right, so you see things like this. All right, so what I'm going to do is connect to the tension in my shoulders, connected. I'm going to open up and I'm going to disperse it out to the etheric field and let it cycle. And then go grab some more, pull it out, out, damn tension, and send it out. All right. And if you close your eyes and really just feel this, when you use your hands to do this, it makes it a little bit easier for you to kind of experience it. For many of us, okay? You can do this entirely still, which is what I usually do, but maybe to get the sense of it, a little motion here might be useful, okay? Now, if you're coordinated, you can have one go down and one go out. Mark, I'm watching you, yes. Good. So one goes out and one goes down. And this will start to look like martial art movements of different kinds, right? You just turn the body, just torque it a little bit, and suddenly you've got kind of cool looking movements, right? But just without the torque, one is up, one is down. Dispersing and grounding. See that? As this course goes on together, we're going to do more and more specific movements. But now, let's just try to not need to use the hands anymore. Now you've got the feeling of this, okay? And by the way, if you're doing this thinking this is stupid, you won't feel anything. You have to actually play. You have to just feel like, yeah, I'm a Jedi. I'm learning to use the Force. Awesome. And you just have to play with it, okay? And then you'll start to actually get some experience in your body. You have to feel it, right? But now just go back to still, okay? Now that we've done the little training wheels version, okay, let go of that and just be still, but do the same thing, all right? So you can eyes closed, scan through the body and ground the tension from the shoulders. Just bring it right down through the structure and into the floor and set that pattern in motion. And then take that same tension and disperse it. Now, again, I just want to reiterate, when Neigong was first brought to China from India, from Bodhidharma, what he taught were very specific standing postures. It's called the Dhammo Waidan. And we're going to work through that set. Actually, everything we've been doing is kind of getting ready for that. And then later, they got amended in different ways to different sets of standing postures. And then later, it got turned into flowing movements, okay? And then these flowing movements later got turned into Tai Chi, and different kinds of arts and things like this evolved from it, okay? So, like, if you want to learn to play jazz, it's important to start and learn how to play blues first. If you can't play blues, you are not going to play jazz. First things first, let's get blues going, right? And then you get bebop, and then you can start talking about modal jazz and Miles Davis, and you can move on like that. If you just start trying to play the modern stuff, you suck. You can't do it. And it's like that in my experience with Qigong. You actually have to start at the very basics, which is just stand. Just stand and just sit, right? And just these static postures. There's a ton of treasure there. And once you've kind of mined some of that and you have some experience with it, then we can start doing structured series of standing postures that have different kind of methods to them. And there's movement inside them that we can do, right? And then that leads to flowing. But for something like this, learning to disperse, a very simple thing you can do is like we just did. If I've got an ache, let's say here, in my blessed my heart, right? If I get a little ache in there, I can pull it out and disperse it. It can look like this. Right? You just imaginatively grab it and move it out. I can ground. I can disperse. Does that make sense? So this is based on the premise of taking dysfunction or pain and getting it out. That's a different premise from taking healthy energy and packing it in. And that's something we'll talk about at a different point. So any questions about this practice of dispersing that are occurring to you at this time? Shokai, yeah?
So when you say cycle it, where's the cycle?
Yeah, that's a little bit vague so far, isn't it? So if you imagine the Earth has like this magnetic field, I keep doing this, right? The first move of the 8 brocade, the Dr. Lu 10 energy movements, or the 8 brocade, basically mimics it. You come up and go out like this. And so I'd like you to think about that as the energy pattern of your key field. It's an oversimplification. There are multiple, the gravity field and the magnetic field, they're all different, but they all overlap. But the basic one is it comes right up through the core of your body, right up the center channel. And I haven't talked about channels yet, but there it is. And then it comes out and it goes out and radiating in all directions, forward and back. It's like a waterfall kind of going out in all directions. And then it comes down and it connects back up and comes out and through, okay? So the very first movement of the 8 brocade Qigong set is exactly that. Does that make sense? So when I disperse, what I'm doing is I'm taking, say, the tension in my shoulder, and I'm taking it and I'm putting it out here, and then it starts to get cycled through like that. Okay? You seem disgruntled.
The dog's barking. I was muting myself, so I didn't.
It's the pooch. Excellent. Moo asserts itself again. All right. Anybody else? Sister, yeah?
I was wondering about other parts of the body that has pain.
Mm-hmm.
Example, a leg.
Yeah.
That has pain all the time.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about it. You can do this sitting, but if I'm standing in my standing posture and say my pain is, I don't know, where is yours? Is it in your knee or
Uh,
hip?
it's, no, it's about here,
Okay.
down there.
Oh yeah. Okay. All right. So grounding, you're standing in your static posture. Okay. And this really is our go-to kind of static posture. Boom, boom, boom. Okay. And then you have everything cycling or grounding, I should say. Okay. Everything, I'm going to get specific with the language. Everything is grounding and grounding and grounding. And so when you encounter, say, that pain here, that your old friend, okay, so you let your mind land in contact on the pain, and then you go underneath it a little bit, and you bring the bottom out. So you kind of contact it, and then open the bottom, and then pull it down with your mind. And so then it goes right through the rest of the leg down to the floor and sinks. Okay, now let's say I've done that process enough and I feel like that's as far as it's going to go. Now I can disperse it. So I'll contact that same pain and I'm going to bring it, say if it's systemic around here, I'm going to take that whole thing and just bring it out. And then here. And then it's going to cycle around, right? So I contact, say it's this point, you know, say if I got a bruise here or whatever, I'm going to pull it out and then let it cycle through. If it's the whole leg, I can pull it this way. It doesn't hurt you if you pull it through both legs like this, it's fine. And then it cycles around. So basically I've got two different energetic directions to alleviate the dysfunction, right? One is down and the other is out and cycles. Does that make sense?
You don't necessarily do it with your hands, you do it with your mind.
Yeah, I'm doing this so you can see it, you know? And I am pointing out that later Qigong series visibly do these kinds of things, and this is part of what you're doing. You're actually, there's a lot, you know, there's a lot that this can be when you see this kind of movement happening, and we're going to talk about a lot of that stuff. But one of the things it's doing is it's helping you visualize moving the energy through your own body. It's not like, it's not just a ball of energy out here in the air that you're playing with, like it's some abstract thing out there. It's moving the energy inside your own structure. My own structure is being moved when I do this. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you.
That was a useful question, yeah. Okay, well, there's our homework. Okay, so again, if you're new to this, I'd hold up the earlier YouTube series. You can start at the beginning and work through, unless you've suddenly realized this is just not what you want to be involved in anymore, and I get it. But if you do, go back to the first one and kind of watch through, because there's a very specific process that we've all been kind of moving through together. And then let me just make a plug for this new text thing that I'm doing, which is really kind of neat. I have to look up the number because it's a new one for me. But yeah, if you're not already on this thing and you want to be, I'd invite you to send me a text. This is a text-only number that I have. And you just say hello in there or something, and it'll respond back, and you can sign up and you'll get a bunch of, basically it's a text-only service that you and I can connect with. And I can also send group things out too. So it's 419-863-1985. Okay. 419-863-1985. It's text only, and I recently used this for folks who have a home altar. If they would text blessing to that, and then connect, and then send me a picture of their home altar, then I can personally connect and send a blessing for their altar. It's been kind of fun, actually. A lot of nice connection has come out of that. But you can just do it generally. Just send a note, say hi or something, if you don't want that blessing thing, and I'll just connect you, and you'll be part of the system that way.
Can you repeat the number again? I just got a pen.
Yeah, it's 419-863-1985.
Thank you.
And who knows what the top hit in 1985 was? Boing-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. Da 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 na da 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 da. Sing it with me. Ya da 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 da. Okay, I don't know why I'm doing that, but that is 1995.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway, I've digressed. But that is the number, okay? It's 419-863-1985. If you want me to do a little blessing of your altar thing, which I'm happy to do, just send blessing to that. And otherwise just send hi or something like that, and I'll make sure you get connected. Okay, everybody? Like, it's great to see you all here. And for those for whom I've not live interacted before, it's lovely to meet you this way. I look forward to more connection like this. And to old friends, God, it's good to see you. I miss you.
Same here.
Yeah, absolutely beautiful. All right, everybody, keep it
Thank
together
you.
for tomorrow, okay? Everybody has best intentions for our country for tomorrow. Everybody has best intentions for our country for tomorrow. Blessings, everybody.
Same to you.
All righty.